Let's start by explaining what the fiscal cliff is. The fiscal cliff is a creation of Congress. It's not something that happened to us. It's something that Congress did. And it's very simple and straightforward. What Congress did is it made sure that all these tax provisions and a bunch of dramatic spending cuts all happened at exactly the same time at the end of this year. In essence, it is a manufactured crisis that the Congress manufactured in a bipartisan way in order to force action at the end of this year. The fiscal cliff would be damaging to our country, and tremendously damaging, because you'd have all these taxes going up on everybody at the exact same time that you'd have these draconian cuts in spending, particularly defense spending. The impact on our economy would be absolutely devastating. We cannot let that happen. By the way, it's a reminder of the kind of deals that they cut here in Washington, D.C. This entire fiscal cliff is partially a product of the debt limit debate of a year ago. I voted against the deal to solve that, not because I didn't think the debt limit was an important issue, but because I thought it was a dumb idea to create a crisis to solve another crisis. And unfortunately, if you listen carefully to some of the talk around Washington, that's exactly what they're trying to do right now. In essence, they're saying, let's solve this crisis by ignoring and therefore making worse a future debt crisis. So here's what I think about it. Let's talk about taxes for a second. People talk about, well, let's raise taxes. The president talks about this a lot. Let's raise taxes on the richest Americans. Richest Americans need to pay more in taxes. It's important to be fair here. The richest Americans do pay more in taxes, a lot more. A significant percentage of our tax code and of our tax burden is paid by the richest Americans, but they need to pay their fair share. We need taxes to fund revenue and to provide revenue and to fund the operations of our government. But here's the truth about tax rates. Tax rates do influence behavior. You want proof? How about why do they want to pass cigarette taxes? Because they know that the higher a tax is on something, the less of it you'll do. Why do some on the left want a carbon tax? Because they know that the more you tax carbon, the less people will produce carbon into the atmosphere. Why does the president want to cut the corporate tax rate, as I do? Because we know that the higher taxes are on corporations, the less likely those corporations will do business in the United States. Taxes do influence the way people behave because it takes money out of their pocket. Quite frankly, it takes profit away from business. And that's why people go into business, to make a profit. It has to be done fairly. It has to be done through a system of true free enterprise and true competition. But that's why people open up a business. If you work at a business, as most Americans in the private sector do, or if you own one, you're in it to make a profit. And your boss has hired you to help them make a profit. So what happens when you raise taxes on people? What happens is they're going to do less of whatever it is you're taxing. So for example, if you raise taxes on investment, which is what the president is asking us to do, if you raise taxes on investments, people will invest less. And if they invest less, that means less new businesses will open. And if less new businesses open, that means less middle-class jobs will be created. So yes, a lot of the people that pay investment taxes are very wealthy people. But we need them to invest their wealth, not take it to another country. Because if they don't invest their wealth, jobs are not created. They also talk about raising the tax rate on the wealthiest Americans. Here's the problem with that. Many of these people are not the wealthiest Americans. The tax rates that the president wants to raise aren't just on millionaires and billionaires. It's on small corporations and small companies that do not pay on the corporate tax. They pay on the personal rate. About a decade ago, there was a change made to the way taxes in America functioned. And a lot of companies who used to pay corporate taxes started paying their taxes on their personal rates. So for example, a small business owner that owns a dry cleaner, a bakery, or a garage, instead of paying as a corporation, they pay taxes on their own personal rate. So what's going to happen to them next year if their taxes go up? By the way, for many people, their taxes are already going up because Obamacare already adds a 3-point-something% tax increase on people's taxes. But in addition to that, what happens if their taxes go up? Well, it's pretty simple. If their taxes go up, but they don't have more customers, they have less money. And so they have to get that money from somewhere. Now, I imagine they can cut their own salary, but what history teaches us is that what some of these businesses will do is they won't hire new people, they won't invest in new equipment, or even worse, they lay people off and they cut people's hours. You're already starting to see some of that behavior. So that's why I oppose raising tax rates. It's not because of a pledge. It's not because of some ideological locked-in mentality. It's because I know history proves that when you raise these tax rates, you hurt the creation of jobs. You ultimately don't just hurt these businesses, you really hurt the employees of these businesses. Now, here's what I agree with the president on. In fact, this is what everybody in Washington agrees on. We do need more revenue. We do need more revenue from government. Government needs more money in order to pay down the debt. And so the debate should be about how do we generate more revenue for government? The president is saying we should generate more revenue by raising taxes. The problem is that the tax increases that the president is offering don't raise enough money. They don't even make a dent on the debt. They really don't make a noticeable difference on the annual deficit. You could fund approximately 9 days' worth of government if we implement the president's tax increases. On the other hand, we know that in return, you're going to hurt a lot of job creation. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to hurt a bunch of jobs being created in exchange for 9 days' worth of deficit reduction? I don't think it's worth it. There are better ways to generate revenue. Here's how. Number one, let's reform our tax code. Let's take a careful look at all these exemptions and loopholes, and let's get rid of the ones that don't make any sense. For example, right now, you can get a tax exemption on a yacht as a second home. That's right. If you own a yacht and that yacht has, for example, a bathroom in it, you can claim that that yacht is your second home, and you get a tax exemption on the interest that you pay on that yacht. I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense. Let's get rid of things like that. I'm not saying that all those exemptions add up to a lot of money, but I am saying if you get rid of these exemptions and flatten the tax code, that will generate some revenue. Revenue that you can use to lower rates on everybody. But here's the thing that will really generate revenue. In fact, it is the only thing that will generate the kind of revenue we need in order to pay down the debt and get control of it. Economic growth. If our economy begins to grow by just 1%, you will see a spike in revenue coming in. In fact, that's what history teaches us. Do you know that when the Bush tax cuts were passed 10 years ago, this country had a historic increase in revenue? That's right. After the Bush tax cuts passed, that means after they lowered taxes in the last decade, revenue to government increased dramatically, historically. Government got more money, not less money. The problem is that in a bipartisan way, government increased spending by an even more historic figure. It's pretty simple. Revenue, they cut taxes, revenue to government went up, but spending went up even more. And Republicans are to blame for that too. That's what we can't allow to see happen now. So I'm all for new revenue. I just don't think raising tax rates is going to get us the revenue we need. I think economic growth will. We don't need new taxes. We need new taxpayers. Just imagine if all these people that are unemployed all of a sudden had a job. They start paying income tax, and that means money starts flowing into our government. So we can fund things like our safety net, and we can pay down our debt. That's what I'm for. It's not about a pledge for me. It's about middle-class job creation, and taxes hurt that. And that's why I'm against raising tax rates on anybody, particularly in an economy that's struggling as it is. I hope this explains my point of view. I respect everyone's point of view. I hope we can have a real debate on this issue, not just a continuation of the campaign. The campaign is over. It's time to govern. It's time to come together as Americans and solve our problems, or we are all going to pay a terrible price.